All right, so today we're going to be talking about how to sleep well on a boat. Sleeping on a boat is kind of a lot harder than sleeping on land, and a lot of the routines and patterns you will have from normal land life don't exactly translate well to boat life. And if you just kind of ignore the little distinct differences between land life and boat life, you end up finding yourself frustrated with boat sleep. I've been living on a boat with my family for 8 years now. We've gone through and learned all the tips and tricks and little tweaks here and there to improve the sleep quality for Liveaboard. So we're going to talk about 6 categories that you need to pay attention to when it comes to sleeping on a boat. You get good at managing these 6 different categories and your sleep will be a lot better. So the first one we're going to talk about is bedding on a boat, or just the bed comfort. It's, to start, most boat beds aren't comfortable, the stock beds that come out of the factory. But most of them tend to be hard, thinner cushion beds. They don't hold on to water. They're pretty durable, pretty tough. But you end up having to replace the bedding on a boat because it's just not comfortable. Or at very least, buy like a 3-inch foam topper to put on top of the bedding. And it can be difficult, I get it. There's a bunch of weird shaped beds when it comes to boating, and the budget might not exist to get a really custom shaped bed made, and you might not have the inclination to DIY, order some big thick foam and cut it up and sew it. So an easy low-hanging fruit thing is to order a mattress topper, and that's easy to cut and then put it on top of your bed. Sometimes you can get a bed that's close enough to being a good fit, or you can buy a standard bed and actually open up the casing and cut out little notches here and there if you need to. Then that's usually pretty good. But whatever bed you do get, or a topper you do get, try to make sure that it doesn't retain too much heat. For a lot of people, heat management while sleeping is already going to be something of a battle. And if you get a bed that, I know there's different kinds of foams, and certain foams retain heat a lot, you don't want a type of foam bed that retains lots of heat. Secondly, when it comes to the bedding, you want to get a high quality waterproof mattress topper that you put on top of the bed. They got good ones now that doesn't feel like you're sleeping on top of plastic. But what will happen invariably is that you will get water. Maybe your hatch leaks, or you left your hatch open when you were out for the day, and you get a bunch of rainwater in on your bed, or like I said, you can develop a leak over time with a deck fitting or something, gets water on your bed. Or we've done this before, accidentally left hatches open and got seawater in on your bed, and you don't want to try to get seawater out of a foam mattress. It probably won't ever go well. It'll eventually smell for sure. So having a good waterproof topper that you can put on top of everything just to like protect your mattress is vital. Underneath your mattress, between your mattress and the platform that it sits on, you need something to allow airflow. That can be slats of wood. That can be, we've got this plastic material with like all these scraggly bits. I'll show you a picture of it here. Create airflow. What it does is it prevents condensation from building up underneath of your mattress, because if that builds up, first of all, your mattress gets damp, but then you can get mold and stuff growing under there. That's no good to be sleeping and smelling mold. In our V-berth, we actually don't have some of these mats, and we do tend to get water, that the precipitation condensation build up underneath the mattress that we have to dry out every so often. It's just one of those things we haven't gotten around to. You will want good moisture wicking sheets, so bamboo or synthetic blend sheets. If you're sleeping and you want the hatches open, you're not running climate control, you're in the tropics, that's all great, but you'll probably sweat a little bit here and there, and you don't want to be sleeping in a pool of your own sweat. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just that it was quite a humid day. As the evening cools off and the humidity drops a little bit, you don't want your bedding holding on to all that humidity. So when you snuggle in, the sheets feel heavy and damp. It doesn't feel good to settle down into. And the moisture wicking is also important when it's cold too. If you're in a colder environment, humidity is still an issue, and you don't want to be sliding into a cold, wet, a cold, damp bed. Moisture wicking sheets, highly recommend for the boat. You'll want a few blankets. You probably want a very lightweight blanket just so you can have something on top of you while you're sleeping, or you'll end up sleeping with basically no sheets, no blanket. And for a lot of people, for me, that's quite an adjustment to learn how to sleep with nothing on top of you because it's so hot. So a very light linen, or maybe linen cotton blend blanket that just you can have on as a top will help in the warm environments, but then having one thick woven or thicker heavy duty blanket that you can use if and when it gets cold, so you don't have to automatically run to try to run space heaters or climate control if the temperature drops a little bit. So a light blanket and a heavy duty blanket per bed. With regard to those bedding, if you're out at anchor or mooring or just away from a marina with a big laundry machine or just normal laundry facilities, it can be really useful to take that bedding out and put it in the sun every so often. Sun, wind, fresh air for a few hours. It'll really just freshen up your bedding in a pretty remarkable way. And then when you bring it back down inside the boat, it just kind of brings that fresh vibe with it. Your sleep will be rewarded for the effort. Another aspect of having comfortable sleeping experience is fans. Ideally, you want one fan per person in the bed. So if there's 2 people sleeping in a bed, you want a fan on each side of the bed that they can adjust how much air they have blowing on them. It also creates a very nice white noise effect that can be really useful when trying to sleep. Circulates the cabin air a bit, and each person can fine-tune how much air they're getting from the fan. Doesn't use much power at all. A lot of times that'll be the determining factor of sleeping miserably or sleeping well, is just learning to use the fan properly. Since we're already kind of talking about air, that is the second category that I want to talk about, is air quality and air safety. So one of the most important things you need, if you're going to be running the generator while sleeping on the boat for air conditioning or heating or whatever, you absolutely must have carbon monoxide detectors. Carbon monoxide is an exhaust product of running engines. It's odorless, and I mean, the exhaust isn't odorless, but the carbon monoxide is odorless. So you might think, oh, I don't smell exhaust, therefore I don't have any carbon monoxide. That might not necessarily be true. Also, you might say like, oh, well, we haven't had an issue before, why would we have an issue now? That's also not true. You can end up in weird situations where, say, your generator's running, the exhaust is flowing down your boat, but say that you have a wind against current situation. So all of a sudden, the front of your boat isn't perfectly into the wind and you're kind of rotated sideways, and that exhaust comes down the side of your boat and creates a little back eddy and comes up through who knows, like your air intake for your engine, or through a companionway that isn't perfectly closed. You don't need the paranoia of going to sleep wondering if you're ever going to wake up again because you got carbon monoxide poison and died at night. Have a carbon monoxide detector in every berth of your boat. It'll save you the stress of having to wonder if you're slowly suffocating as the carbon monoxide, binds to your blood cells and forces out oxygen. The other monitor that I think is useful to have on a boat is a carbon dioxide sensor. Carbon monoxide comes from engines. Carbon dioxide comes from people, from breathing out. In small spaces, it's not something you have to worry about if your hatches are open, but if you have your boat closed up and you're running the generator for air conditioning or heating, or you're at a marina, you're keeping the boat closed up all day for running air conditioning, the carbon dioxide will build up fairly rapidly inside of a boat and hit levels that will create irritability, mild cognitive impairment, poor sleep quality. And for us, this is something we only recently thought through and bought the sensor for, and then quickly discovered, because it's wintertime where we are right now, the boat is closed up a big portion of the day. I was wondering, I got the sensor. First time I turned it on, we were in the red zone. It's not toxic, not at the realistic levels you're going to be achieving on a boat, but it definitely can make everybody grumpy and ruin your sleep. So a good carbon dioxide sensor will teach you how often do you need to open and close the hatch? How quickly does it build up? If it's just one person staying in the boat versus you have your family and you have 4 people staying on a boat, it makes a big difference how quickly that carbon dioxide will build up. So I'll have a link to the carbon dioxide. Well, I'll have a link to a page where I have all the links for everything. It's in the carbon dioxide. The sensor will be on there too. The reason I started to suspect we need a carbon dioxide detector actually kind of blends into our third category here, which is kind of personal sleep monitoring and collecting sleep data. You don't necessarily need to be a health nut and to go full blown into like understanding your sleep tracking and monitoring your sleep data. Nowadays, it's really easy to get a device, pretty affordable too, to get a device that will monitor your sleep for you. If you don't already have one, I highly recommend, especially as you're transitioning and learning how to sleep well and live a board life, or say you've already sleeping on a boat and just realizing that for some reason your sleep seems to suffer more than you'd expect. You start using some of these monitoring devices, and then you can start to fine tune or tweak different things. You can use like a smartwatch, like an Apple Watch or a Garmin watch or whatever, or an Oura ring. So I use an Oura ring. I sleep with this, and it's a little computer that tracks all my sleep data every day. I can look at it. And I noticed that now that we have 5 people living on the boat with a new baby, and I noticed that when sleeping in the smaller berth, my respiratory rate, how much I breathe, was higher than I normally is, higher than I would expect. Not dramatically higher, but just like, that's weird. I wonder why I'm breathing a little bit faster. I just correlated it. I was like, I wonder if maybe the air is bad and there's air buildup issues. And that's when I got the carbon dioxide sensor and turned it on. And I was, oh, we're in the red zone. Yeah, we should probably open a hatch, even though it's cold outside. Open a hatch. The boat will cool a little bit. The heater tends to keep up with it. Also, the tracking can help you just learn how much time in bed you need to get quality sleep. A lot of people don't realize the degree to which if you're in bed for 8 hours, that doesn't mean you sleep for 8 hours. Oftentimes if you're in bed for 8 hours, you'll sleep for 7 hours. You'll get 7 hours of decent sleep. So if you want 8 hours of good sleep, you need to be in the bed 9 hours. Well, on a boat in different situations, say you're anchored out and the weather is a little bit squirrely, and you can basically expect that every so often, maybe once every other night, you're gonna have to wake up to close hatches because it's raining. You might realize that in order to get 8 hours of sleep, you need to spend 9.5 to 10 hours in the bed. So the data will start to show you for different situations how you need to treat them, because that's a big thing. How you sleep on the boat will change depending on where you are. We'll talk about that later, but the data and the tracking can help you adapt as you change your situation. And we'll talk about that now. So section 4 is learning how to adjust your sleep patterns and your sleep setup based on how your environment might be changing. So I highly recommend, and this is what we do. I have sort of a evening routine that I'll go through that can vary depending on where I am and what the environment is. And that routine can look fairly distinctly different. Okay, so what's the common routine? If we're anchored out, say we're anchored out and it's been pretty hot, but we're somewhere fairly close to land and the bugs are getting bad, we'll oftentimes close the boat up right around sunset when the bugs are getting the worst, close the boat up, turn the generator on for 1 or 2 hours, cool down the boat, dry out the boat. The air conditioner does an amazing job of dehumidifying the boat. So suck all that moisture out of the linens and the bedding and all that stuff. Prevent your boat from getting inundated. As the sun goes down, you have your cabin lights on, the bugs want to come inside. So cool the boat down, prevent the bugs, dehumidify the boat, and then after 1 to 2 hours after the sun is firmly settled and down, you can turn the air conditioner off, open things back up, and sleep pretty well. Also, as you go to bed, a good thing to do if you're at hook or on a marina, but particularly if you're on the hook, check the weather forecast before you go to bed. See if there's any fronts coming through, if there's anything or storms that are coming through that are likely going to wake you up. If you know at 2 a.m. it's going to start raining, you might as well close the boat up ahead of time, or at least expect to have to wake up. Maybe only keep 1 or 2 hatches open. Part of the bedtime routine is checking the weather before you go to sleep so you can preempt the environment. If you're at a marina, often you'll be able to close the boat up and use climate control, or at very least, maybe you don't need climate control, but you can put screens in your hatches. Always lock the boat so that our sliding doors, companionway. I don't like to leave the boat open when at a marina. Even most of the time on anchor, I lock the primary entrance to the boat so that there's just no way that anybody could get on the boat and come in at night. It just helps me sleep better. We'll talk about the fifth system, I guess we've kind of already been talking about, but is setting up peace of mind while sleeping. And basically, you don't want to have to sit in bed worrying about things. Or not, maybe worry is the wrong word. True, could be worry, but it could also just be thinking about things. Oh, is this thing, did this happen? What's that noise? Did I remember to do this? Have systems in place that will help you wind down mentally a little bit. And so some of the systems, an anchor alarm. For some people, this is a big deal, having an anchor alarm that will let them know if their boat starts to drag. Personally, I don't use an anchor alarm. I don't like false positives, and I find that I know they've gotten better over the years, and so maybe I should reconsider this, but I don't like anchor alarms. I instead prefer to have just really good ground tackle. I'd rather have the confidence, and this takes time, but the confidence in my ground tackle that barring some strong storm that comes through or a weather front that completely changes the wind direction, that I'm not going to drag. I mean, if there is going to be a big weather front that comes through, maybe I'll set an alarm then. But anchor alarm or not, what I do actually is I'll have my phone and I'll use a Navionics app and I'll put a pin where we are when we go to sleep. And then if I want to figure it out if I wake up and want to know where we are, I can just open my phone and look to see that we're more or less where the pin was, and that's usually good enough for me. Also, anchoring so that you don't have anybody directly in front of you or directly behind you can be a pretty big peace of mind strategy. If somebody's directly in front of you or directly behind you, then you have to worry about them dragging into you. Even if you know your gear is good, your ground tackle is good, you don't know if theirs is, or if they put out enough scope, or if this is a place where the hook needs to be set, if they set their hook. And what can be tricky is if the wind's going to shift. Somebody might not be in front of you when you go to bed, but then the wind shifts 30 degrees clockwise, and you wake up, and then all of a sudden somebody is in front of you and they drug into your bow or they're bumping your boat. It's not great. So again, that's where knowing how to anchor, have a good anchoring strategy, and knowing what's going to happen with the weather kind of all come together. You can know that, hey, I know later tonight the wind's going to shift 30 degrees clockwise and there's nobody over there. And you can kind of picture it. You just go out and look, like, if my boat swings this way and that boat swings that way, no, they're still not going to be in front of me. And the same with the people behind you. If you're not entirely sure about your ground tackle yet, think, if I do drag, am I going to drag in? Is there like a $2 million yacht behind me that I'm going to drag into? And oftentimes what you can do is, maybe if you don't trust your anchor gear yet, or you're fairly new, anchor in the back of the anchorage field, so that if you do drag, you just kind of drag out and not into somebody. And that can give you some peace of mind too. Bilge alarms are great, especially if you're going to do something like run the air conditioner all night long and you're not confident, or just, it really doesn't matter. Having a bilge alarm in general is great for peace of mind, so you don't have to wake up and step into water above the floorboards. That's terrible. And also, what a bilge alarm can help you is, sometimes you might wake up in the middle of the night and be like, are we listing? I don't know. Are we listing? Maybe we're listing. I don't know if we're listing. If you have bilge alarms, you know that you can trust that you're not listing because you're sinking. Maybe the wind is pushing on you differently. Maybe you're just sleeping on a pillow, or this has happened to us. Maybe you anchored too close to shore, and then at low tide you ended up like cockeyed a little bit on the shoreline. Well, at least we weren't sinking; we were just sitting aground. When the tide came up, everything was fine. If you're in an unfamiliar anchorage, like you've just showed up somewhere, say you're transiting and you just kind of duck into an anchorage for the night, I highly recommend, if there's any sort of boat traffic that might be coming through that anchorage, use some sort of outdoor lighting system. Yes, obviously your anchor light, but more than that. And it can be as simple as those little inflatable lamps, the solar charging lamps that you hang out a few of those, leave some cabin lights on, leave a cockpit light on. If you have spreader lights or top-down lights, put some of those lights on. You want to make it so that if a local is transiting the area, they're not surprised all of a sudden that there's a big old boat where they didn't expect a boat, and they're zipping through that anchorage in the dark and smash into you. Just put a little bit of a light on. We've had instances where we've had to pull, like we've been motoring and kind of get caught out in the ICW without a great spot to anchor, and we'll usually go till right about just before dark, anchor, just kind of pull off to the side of the ICW, give enough room for barges or whoever might come through at night, and then we'll be up at first light, but I'll leave the spreader lights on showing the boat so that anybody who happens to be coming through knows that there's a boat on the side of the road, so to speak, and we don't get hit. Same thing for the sides of inlets. Sometimes you get big sport fishers running in and out inlets, and they just don't even think that somebody might have ducked in the middle of the night to get out of a storm or something. I know I've thrown a lot at you, but the last thing would be noise management, I think. And noise management on the boat. First of all, white noise, use a fan. You can get some noises that are pretty excessive, but there's strategies. Oftentimes this is marinas. There will be a berth that is usually touching the dock at the marina, and there's fenders to keep you off the dock. And the rubbing of those fenders can really create a squeaky, chaotic mess of noise. So oftentimes that's just because the fender is too tight. But what you usually do is move the fenders away from the berth so it's not right on the other side of the wall of where somebody's head is, and that'll significantly diminish the sound that enters their cabin. You can get or make these felt or kind of fender covers. They work pretty well. We don't have them. They also seem to get gross a lot, and it's not something I want to have to manage. Another thing can be lines. The line sits somewhere for a long time, especially on top of a cabin, as the boat shifts in the slip, and squeak, 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 squeak. Oftentimes you can ease that line and add tension to another line if it's causing a problem. This is something that you'll have to, each time you move to a new marina and tie up again, you might have to learn to tweak or learn where to put the fenders and not put the fenders. Another big one is halyard slap. So if you have a mast or just any sort of, and this is more true of sailboats, but the boat can be super quiet one night and then some wind comes through and your halyard just kind of, the halyard's the long rope that goes up and down the mast to pull the mainsail up, will swing out and slap, swing out and slap. So ding, 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 ding. But because it's hitting your mast goes through your boat, it's kind of echoing inside your vessel. That's easy enough to fix by using bungee cords or getting just a spare line and tying it, pulling it away from the mast. For us, a big one is when the dinghy kind of swings in the davits. It's super creaky, so adding a line on either side of the dinghy to keep it from rocking back and forth keeps that noise from coming right in over our head. Noise management is, I mean, some people don't care. Like, the noise doesn't bother them, they'll sleep through anything, but for us, I think for most people it's good. And then also like blinds, having good blackout curtains, and for your hatches, like hatch covers, either hatch covers or like sliding covers, I guess rolling blinds to cover your hatches, so that if you want to sleep in past 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun rises in the Caribbean, you actually have a chance of doing so. Regardless, your sleep on the boat will probably not be as good as your sleep on land, just because there's so many variables, so many moving parts, that even now, while I do sleep better, there's always going to be something that tricks you, calls you out, you didn't cover for, you got complacent on, and your sleep will be a little bit harder than it was, but it doesn't need to be miserable. You don't need to, like, you shouldn't have to be in the state where you just want to go to a hotel every other week just to get 1 or 2 good nights of sleep. If that's happening to you, it might happen to you in the beginning, happened to us in the beginning, but if that's happening to you regularly, then it's not the boat's fault, probably. There's probably a lot you can do to improve your sleep quality, and maybe you're not in a position where you can be running the air conditioner and a generator in the evening, or your boat doesn't have an air conditioner, or if you do have it, a lot of times, like especially in this boat, it's the way this boat was, we had an air conditioner, but the air conditioner cooled down the bridge deck, and none of the cool air was getting down into the cabins. So to start with, we actually just unplugged the air hose and like ran it down into the cab. Bought off Amazon a long air hose and ran it down to the cabin. Since then, we've done proper ducting of the air. But I get it. You might have a boat where even the air conditioner isn't helping, and you have to close the boat because the bugs are so bad, and then you're just sleeping hot, sweaty, and miserable. There are lots of steps you can do to fix that, and at least make it a little bit better. And then give yourself some more time in bed. And lastly, this just popped into mind. The last thing, I'm not going to preach, but you should be aware, if you don't already know, any sort of alcohol whatsoever really is detrimental to quality of sleep. You might choose not, and alcohol oftentimes is associated with boat life, right? That's kind of the dream, is not to get drunk per se, but to be able to go have sundowners and hang out socially with friends and live up the good life. You might choose not to drink when there is going to be a hot night, but you do you. So I know I went over a lot, and everybody's boat situation will be a little bit different. Their layout will be different. Their considerations will be different. So my name's Ryan. First of all, I didn't say that before, but I help people transition into liveaboard life. I help people design and optimize their liveaboard life, and I help come up with solutions that will work for your particular situation. So if you're interested in working with me, there's a link down below where you can go and set up some time to chat with me, and we'll work through your problems and come up with solutions specific to you, how you like to live, and what your situation is. Sleeping on a boat is one of those things I don't think people realize is as much work as it is at first. And it doesn't have to be work, but if you go into it with the wrong mindset, it's an unpleasant surprise. So hopefully this video kind of arms you with the tactics so that as you're transitioning into this life, you can come back and maybe even re-reference this video for the tools to like say, let's smooth this out. Let's not have to go through the rough patches of figuring it out from scratch. All right? That's the intention. Anyways. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.